Jack grew up on a dairy farm in Buda, Texas.
Oh, there goes the
I let out the secret.
Yeah, you
And
let out the
Jack.
he attended Texas A&M studying business and computer systems. And then later he founded his own consulting company called K's Consulting in Austin, which led him to design, build, train, and manage and support enterprise class best of breed systems for clients from 10 to 500 servers. Wow. And from with 10 to 50,000 users. So the technologies for that included VMware, Microsoft, Unix, Linux, and Cisco. So he's, a brain. That's all I could say. But all the while, Jack was also playing guitar and lead singing in a band around Austin. And I think they even did traveling some and went on the road and stuff. But in fact, I met Jack when his then girlfriend, Debbie Beinhorn, brought him to my suite, Meet 'em Suite at the Four Seasons in Austin during a South by Southwest conference. And the two of them helped me get ready for one of the many suite parties that I used to throw while I was marketing for Meet 'em. And so Jack has a great voice, and he's got a good high voice. So Debbie suggested that he be my demo singer for the Billy character of my Give Me a Break musical, which you guys have heard those songs from Give Me a Break. And so, I mean, Billy just he's got that part that's screamer and it's way up there. And Jack, he set a standard that was hard to live up to for our young actors when they performed that. But I love the tracks that he laid, and but I digress. Jack is so creative that he designed and patented amplifiers that produce vintage analog tone vintage analog tone amps. So he founded another company called Tex Watt Amps. And so Jack is going to tell us all about Tex Watt amps tonight and give us some demonstrations and stuff. He currently lives in Dripping Springs. So when you see his room, that's going to be there in the hill country, in the beautiful hill country on 12 or 18 acres or something like that in Dripping Springs, and where I have spent a few heavenly days swimming and watching the deers wander his property. So he's there in a little bit of heaven in Dripping Springs. Please welcome Jack K.
Thank you. Thank you. Where do you get all this stuff, Miss Barbara?
Was it not true?
Digging.
Was it not true?
Yeah. To some degree, there's some truth in all advertising in there. I'm marketing, sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many of us we've got here. I can see 5, 6 at a time. And is it okay, like Harry, interactive? If somebody has questions as we go along, interrupt me, raise a flag, let me know. We'll answer as we go. I don't think there's Harry, 8 or 10 people maybe online now.
They're
There's
kind of
12.
they're kind of shy. Sometimes they need to be encouraged.
Okay.
We've got 12 people online. If you guys want to ask a question, you can. There should be a little hand down there in the reactions area. Right. If you go to the reactions part and click on that, there's a thumbs up and stuff like that. Wait, where's the raise the hand thing? I don't see it.
I don't know. We never use it, but we just most people just ask a question.
Yeah, we just ask, right?
Yeah, the person who talks.
Raise hand. If you hit the reactions button, it'll show a raise hand button.
Well, yeah, don't be shy about asking stuff as we go along. So, where to start? I guess Barbara told a lot. I guess I've known you, Barbara, 20 plus years now.
Oh, I don't know.
Did we even tell that?
Yeah, at least 20.
Probably been about that long.
Yeah.
And I've been watching while you guys are talking, and in the background, maybe with the exception of Francine and Bobby, I'd see multitudes of guitars, amps, a bunch. Nobody has just one, right? Do any of you? So what happened? How did this amp start, or what happened? I spent most of the 60s, late 60s and 70s in a tour bus. And I'd leave my house and be gone 2 to 4 months. And in those days, you didn't have cell phones. I don't even think, no, we didn't even have pagers then. And I played predominantly on Marshalls. Still got my 69 sitting over in the corner. I'll whip around and show Steven in a minute, I guess, because he's got a bunch of them. And the thing would break, and you're in a bus at 2 o'clock in the morning riding along. And I would keep 4 of them in a truck, and 2 or 3 of them would be blown up at any given time. So you would take the amp apart, find the part that was blown up, try to find one in the truck that had a good part, like a carcass, something you could rob parts off, boneyard, and see if you could build the amp, build something so you could play on the next day, right? Because we still got to eat, and you don't have an amp, you don't play, you don't eat. And going through these amps, when you were trying to fix them, it was surprising at the lack of the lack of quality parts that went into them. And you'd be tearing into a $2,000 Marshall at 3 o'clock in the morning in a bus, trying to weld it back together, and go, man, here's a $1.98 potentiometer from Radio Shack. And that wasn't what I would have expected on the inside. So you kind of set that aside. And as we all do, if you're you're traveling and you got a lot of time on your hands and you're shooting the breeze, I think, well, someday I'll have an amp company and I'll build something that is the amp I wish I would have had when I was playing. I did nothing with the idea. I think Barb, in one of the meetings, she mentioned that she was telling people, did you have trouble with the amp name, Barb, right off the bat? I don't know how politically correct everyone is.
I said the twat amp, and they went, what?
Okay, guilty. Well, and there's a story there, but it's a tight group, I'll tell you. You look over, I mean, there's still one with the old logo on it in the corner right here that still doesn't have the X. And so you fast forward about, my record company folded, and 2 magazines had done articles on Pick Hit of the Year in Record World and Cashbox. And so the record company, Record World, and Cashbox all folded. And I thought, that's got to be me somewhere. I'm to hell with this, and I'm going back to Texas and go back to work with my old man's cattle company. And you fast forward about 30 years, I did nothing with the idea for the amplifier. And I kind of get where I'm winding down from building data centers. And a radio station in Houston did one of those "Where Are They Now" things, where they get the drummer out of rehab and the bass player out of the gas station, and they put you together and let you do a gig. And I got to thinking about, maybe I'll build the amp again. What do you build? What kind do you build? We know we want to make it out of quality parts, but then what? So in looking at you guys' rooms, and I guess when y'all look at your old rooms, what do you primarily see? Steven's back behind him. What have you got, Steven? You got Fenders, and is there a Vox back behind your head? And you got Marshalls, and you got a Dr. Z, right? So yeah. In a nutshell, as for me, an artist and songwriter, and for all of you guys, you're songwriters, then I write more than one song. They don't all sound alike. I've got all these different amplifiers to make different tones. Well, let me save the amps on the last. They're in different keys. They're in different genres. The feel's different. None of you guys had one guitar on the wall. You had at least one Fenderish kind of something, and something with humbuckers. And so why would I only have one amplifier? And the answer is I wouldn't. So what are you going to build? And what I arrived at, and where the patent lies with this one, How many guys, are you guys kind of familiar with tone stacks and how amps in general 50,000 foot view work?
Yep.
I see one yes and some shaking heads. So in a nutshell, they call it a tone stack because the tubes in the amp build the frequency ranges. So if you take everything you hear, let me get it where you can see it in the screen, right? From here to here, and it's okay, how's this? And you divide that up into sections. Amplifiers build that tone, whatever comes out of your guitar, they do it in sections. So they work the gain stage, then they work the bass end of it, then the mids, then the highs, etc., and they stack it up so it becomes a tone stack. Then it hands off the power amplifier to make it louder for the speakers. So in a tone stack, there's basically two theologies of amplifier, American, British. Everybody probably knows, but not being sophomoric, but the mid 50s Fender made a Bassman, thinking first it would be for bass players, and guitar players took it over and go, I love this, I want this tone. Shortly thereafter, a Vox comes into play. If you can go look up and do the homework, but say from Vox, there was a guy that worked at Vox named Jim Marshall. He left Vox and created Marshall. There was a guy working at Marshall that left Marshall and created Hiwatt. So 60, 70 years later, from the 50s till today, we still have two basic families of amplifiers, American and British. And I found when you get ready to build an amp, what do? Because again, I write more than one song, it's in more than one key, blah, 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 more than one feel. So sometimes I need a Fender, sometimes, or an American. Well, I won't say Fender Vox. Sometimes I need an American sound, sometimes I need a British sound. So what I did was I put both circuits in my amps and I run them in parallel. And then I broke them down to the smallest component and then give you switching so you build your own amp on the fly. And if you think in terms of building blocks like Legos and going back to the tone stack, I can hand you a group of switches, or it's what we do with this amp, it's what we patented. And you could be all American, you could be all British, or you could be any of 64 combinations in between. Then, or mixing, matching, whatever. Then on top of that, we add in multiple gain floors because it's also tone. It's also about how much breakup do you want, how clean, how dirty, where are you trying to go with this? Then, excuse me. So that was the way the thing started. And the big amps behind me on this side or over on this wall are combos. We started with those. I can't tell you the number of transformers we blew up because when you willy-nilly just flip from an English theology to a British theology, you think you've got it, and 3 weeks later you melt a $600 transformer and you're back to the drawing board to adjust things. So about the time we had it ready to go live, I had a car wreck and my high voice went away, Bobby. You can still see the scar.
Oh.
So it broke my neck in 4 places, back and forth, 4 discectomies, knees, etc. And I was on my back for a couple of years. And now I've got the rasp in my voice. So the Stevie Winwood stuff's kind of gone. I don't know where I'll go with it now. And I decided these amps back, like you see here, are 135 pounds a piece. So going back to, if you get the theology, if you will, of American Brit and you mix and match circuitry, then the other thing is don't put any $1.98 Radio Shack parts in it. Every piece that's in this amp is cost was not, didn't come into the equation. Whatever it cost is what it cost. Let's build anything that we know how to do, let's put it in there. So if you're familiar with Mercury Magnetics, is probably the preeminent transformer maker in the world. Then I call a buddy out there, Patrick Selfridge, say, I want to make this, I want to make this amp. I want you to build the transformers. This is what you've done your whole life. Make the best thing that you can come up with. He said, what's your price point, etc. Don't have one. Just build it. We'll fight over costs later. He gets excited because he said, I've never had anybody tell me this before. It's always, I got to make it for this much and it's got to do, etc. So the first transformers, and these guys over here ran me about 600 and something bucks a pop. So I probably got more in a transformer basically than it would take Fender to build an entire Fender Twin at their part. And everything about it, there's no printed circuit boards. There's nothing solid state. It's hand wired point to point straight through. I've got one hole going in. I'm not sharing my amp with anybody. I don't leave any circuitry where there's a chance for an infinitesimal amount of signal to leak out, so that you're carrying everything that comes in the front all the way through till you get to the speakers. The downside is it's hugely expensive. It weighs 135 pounds and takes a lot of time. So on the big amps, we bring people into the studio. We hook them up on a spectrograph. We work with them 2 or 3 days. We say, here's our starting circuits for British American, and then you work with them till they say, man, I need 2 more dB at 1800 cycles. And then we rewire the amplifier, change out pieces, parts, resistors, caps to get what frequency they want. We tweak it. Then we let them choose from 8, 10, 15 different kinds of speakers, size, resonance, power, what features the speaker has. Then they pick the cabinets, they pick the grill cloth, they pick the feet, they pick the handles, they even pick the cases that they go in. They leave, we come back, and it takes about 5 weeks to 2 months to build it all and assemble it. And they leave with a one-of-a-kind, custom-made for them amp that still has, they're actually leaving with a set of British circuitry and a set of American circuitry that they can mix and match, and they can raise and lower the gain floor. So the reason for doing that is you want to get the maximum amount of headroom and footroom, headroom and legroom. So I'd like to start out with my knobs all at the 12 o'clock position, find the circuit that hits what I am looking for. And every one of you guys, I think, will know this. As a musician, songwriter, something, before you even put anything down, you've got something you envision here, and you got something you feel here. And we're all chasing that, whatever the tone, the kind of guitar, the tuning, the key, the vibe, the feel, to do this and this. And when we get there, what happens for a guitar player? They glaze over, they zone out, they stare a hole through you and just lay back and get away from me. All I want to do is play. So for us, when we can bring an artist in and work with them and get an amp that will do that, and they glaze over, ignore us, and start playing, that's my payoff. Because it's about an artist. What happens? You play gigs, and maybe 1 out of 10 gigs does everything sound exactly like you want, and it's just nirvana when you have one of those. But it doesn't happen often enough. So if we can give you a tool that has more positions, more latitude, more headroom, more legroom, more channels, more American Brit combinations, where you can find that sweet spot for this and this, this is what this is all about. A, can we find the sweet spot so the amp goes to the artist and the artist doesn't have to go to the amp? And B, can we make their gigs be this nirvana thing more than, say, 1 out of 10? And if we can get to 6, 8, 7, 8, 9 out of 10, more the better. You'd like for every gig to be one of those. I've got a buddy that calls it a heartgasm. I guess we can say that, but he said, you guys all know when you do something and you do it right, and you have those evenings where it's like, there could be nothing wrong with the world. Everything is there. So that's what the big amp was about. Then I have the car wreck, and you realize I probably can't be hauling this 135-pound thing around. So let me get one. I'll just hold it and show you. So we took the same patented technology. By the way, we put in 21 patent claims based on the circuitry in the big amp. And last June, I believe, Patent Office approved all 21 of them. They gave me one patent number because I just filed them all together, but they approved 21 patent claims in that one thing. And from the big 135-pound amp, we shrunk it down. And I'll give you the bad news first. There's no way to remove that much weight out of an amp without involving solid state, some way or another. And the amp that this guy that I'll show you in a sec then has a solid state component. And Bill that works with me was on an Eric Johnson tour in Germany. They run into these German guys that have a patent for a new next generation after Class D audiophile amp. And they said, we'd like to build you one for this small project you're doing. 6 months later, they send me an amp that's about the size of a deck of playing cards that is a 100-watt amp. I over-engineered it. These amps behind me are 50 watters. I'll get back to why there's 100 in this one. It's an overhead reason. And it's got less than 0.01% distortion at 100 watts at 4 ohms. It was over-engineered, and the inside of this guy, if you can see it, I'll put the other one up on the screen in a sec. Can you see the little British and American flags? Y'all can see those? I can't say Fender, Vox, or what circuit, what your ear will tell you it is, but there's not a guitar player alive that if you show him a British American flag and talk about British American sounds, they would know. So this guy has the same patented circuitry as the big boy. British American flags, you see the 4 main switches that build your tone stack. And then the gain switch is under here that gives you 4 different gain floors. All told, you now have 64 combinations of hand-wired, all tube. This has 2 12AX7s in it, and it hands off to the 100-watt amp instead of a 50. And the goal was to run the 100-watt amp cold so that it doesn't color the sound any more than you have to. And we just want it to reproduce audiophile quality as someone that would run a sound system, let's say, or a real high-end stereo or replay stuff in a studio. So that gets us down to this guy, and 4.5 pounds. I can lift it with, between this stuff, they tell me don't lift anything over 10 pounds anymore. And so this is meant to fit on your pedal board. So when you look down at it, it's like looking at the face of an amp. I'll show you, let me change screens. The one that's running back behind me, whoops, let me get to the right one here, sorry. So this amp that I'm just throwing in this screen, you notice where it says gain type, bass, vid1, and mid 2. Some of the knobs are red and some are blue, right? I don't know how you guys' eyes are, but for me doing gigs anymore at 70, I can't hardly see squat. And so looking down at this amp, red is for red coats, blue is for blue coats. If you can't see the American and Brit flags, then just looking down at it, the color codes will let you know where you are with circuitry. And then I made purposely a gray background with big chicken head knobs. And you'll soon know, of course, bass, mid, treble, where they live. And now you can just look down at your feet and you know where you are, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the whole skinny with the amplifier. What do we do? Why do we do it? What was the goal in doing it? And the goal is to make an amplifier that came to the artist. I know if you're Joe Bonamassa and you've got 10 guys to carry 6 amps for you and stick on a stage, what, $300,000 worth of amps, then great. If you're like the rest of us, this thing comes in pretty handy. Is it as good? Is the tube hybrid as round and full as the complete hand wired point to point straight through? No, it can't be. But this thing's pretty damn good. I have people tell all the time, I never would have thought it had a solid state component if you did not tell me. So we toyed with the idea this afternoon with Harry and Paul that works with me, that's at a Black Fred event tonight in Austin, of trying to demo somewhat. But you know what Zoom does to music sounds. And when I'm trying to show you the big changes from something that would go all Vox Marshall-y to something that goes to a Fender or a big deep like a Dumble, it just doesn't come across. We may try it in a bit if somebody just wants to see it. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go, Michael. But it just doesn't come across so good. So that's a starting place to give you an idea of why it was done and why it took so long and what happened with it and what the idea is with the circuitry. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, this is you plug this into a cab, right? A speaker cab.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So can it be plugged into, say, my deluxe reverb, for example? It's got a speaker extension plug, I think, on it. So you can plug the deluxe reverb.
Absolutely.
Or I don't know if it could be plugged. Could it be plugged into? I've got a Tweed Deluxe.
It doesn't care. It's just looking for a speaker.
Okay.
So don't you think about it being plugged into like a PA system? Like if you're going out to a festival, like Deep Arts Festival, they've already got a PA. You don't have to lug an amp. You just take that little box and you get the amp sound and it comes out through the PA system, right? Isn't that what it's meant to do?
This is an amp. It's the whole enchilada. So this takes the place of, you know, if you look at a Marshall and you've got that thing that's, or look behind Steven, you've got a head sitting on that angle back Marshall cabinet he's got behind him. This takes the place of that entire Marshall head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a preamp. It's still 12. Same 12AX7s are in a Marshall and a high watt and a Vox and a Fender. They share the same preamp tubes.
So like so is it similar to like the old Rockman? Remember the Rockman that was the little box that made all those sounds?
The output signal on this thing is hot. It drives a speaker. It's not a direct box that you can plug into a PA. It would probably burn that out, right?
Well, okay. I'm letting Barbe finish because there's things that I'm stickler about. I don't have a DI in this head because the thing I made a big stink about it being straight through. You lose signal anytime that you put even a Y in there. If I have two places to plug in a guitar and I plug into this one, then there's a loose circuit here. So I'm losing a very small, maybe immeasurable. But anything that had anything to do with sound, I even build the stinking cabinets out of pine. I had to go to North Carolina to find 14-inch wide pine boards so that by the time you build the cabinet, I can get to my desired 12 inches a little over deep. Why 12? Most of these things that commercially, I've got an old Vox behind me. You see right there, AC30 down the hall. And that AC30 and the two Fenders right there down the hall also, there may be 9 inches deep. But some magic happens, and I don't even know if I can explain why, when the depth of the cabinet gets bigger. And I did not want laminated pine. There's a lot of cabinets out there that have laminated pine. But the old wives' tale from Fender in the 50s was that not only did they use solid pine, but they were contiguously cut so that the grains of the wood went to here. They cut it They carried through, they carried through, and they carried through, and they resonate better. Now, by the time you put vinyl on it, is that true or not? But why monkey with it? So rather than do that, I refused to use the laminated wood. It needed to be over 12 inches deep. It had to be contiguously cut, for example. And then getting back to your thing about plugging directly into a PA. It works for a bass player. It doesn't work for a guitar player. Why come? You guys that play guitar, you already know the answer, is that the sound that comes directly out of a bass is okay. It doesn't need the colorization. We don't want to color a bass signal historically. Guys are doing a lot more now than they used to, but we don't want to color that historically the same way that we need breakup. If, depending upon what genre I'm playing, I may want to be semi-clean. I may want a blues breakup. I may want a death metal distortion. And I can't get that if I'm just playing clean, right? So I got to push things, number one. Number two, an amp is going to create frequencies, let's say, that go from here to here. But when you plug it into a speaker, speakers have their own properties. And most guitar speakers will start rolling off heavy after about 5-6K. And if I plug what comes out of my amplifier, any amplifier, straight into a PA system, you won't like it. It's way too high, too shrill, too much of this upper stuff that we don't normally hear because the speaker is rolling it off. Yes? Does it make sense? So therefore, every amp that has a DI that goes to a PA that is a guitar amp has a thing called a speaker emulator. What's that made out of? It's solid state. They put a solid state thing in, so you go to all this trouble to have a tube through and through. And I'm a tube bigot. There's just things that happen in tubes that won't happen in anything that has to do anything with solid state. It just doesn't work. And I actually ran into 3 guys at the NAMM show. My buddy that works with me says, I got 3 friends coming, and they're school teachers, but they're artists in California, and they tour Europe in blues bands in the summer, and then they teach school during. And I said, okay, good. So they come to NAMM. What he doesn't tell me, they were all 3 doctors of physics that taught at the universities in California. So we're up till 3 in the morning talking about bump frequencies that happen 7 and 8 harmonics. Y'all know what all that is, the doubling of the sound harmonics. And why a Stradivarius sounds like it does, because there's bump frequencies in the 8th harmonic that create a 3rd harmonic down in an area we can hear, even though the harmonic bump frequencies themselves happen at 80, 90, 100 and something thousand cycles. And the net is we'll get maybe a 300 cycle that we can hear that's a result of bump frequencies in places we can't hear. None of that ever happens in solid state. It can't. And so all of us, most of you guys look like you're more than 20. And so if you're older than 20, we remember what stuff sounded like when we had vinyl in the 60s. And why did the vinyl sound different than the CDs do now? How was it recorded? We sample now, we don't record. We got rid of drag and hiss, but now we sample and it's digital. And so the digital stuff just sounds different than the analog. And certain instruments are really dependent on the grind and the grit that we get out of old tubes. So if it wasn't for the weight factor, this little guy could not exist if I didn't have a solid state part. So we've gone to great lengths to over-engineer the power section so that the colder you run something, the less it colors a signal. Y'all all know that. So I built all of my signal in the same way I do on the big amps, or my tone stack. That's all tube. These are still hand wired. They're still done one at a time. We just put them in a small box, and we eliminated the heavy transformers and tubes and replaced it with a small amp. So this will fit on my pedal board. And it's also got a 110, 220 transformers. So go anywhere in the world and play on it. You just plug it in and go. So the long answer, sorry, Barbara, is that you could plug it into a PA, but they suck. They sound bad. Any amp will. And the answer to that has been, you just put in a speaker emulator. And you'll see speaker emulators that say, oh, this is a Blackface, this is a Marshall, this is a whatever. And what they've done is they looked at the frequencies produced by that amp or by that speaker, and then they just build in a circuit that will roll off frequencies in the same manner that that speaker would do on paper. But your ear would tell you that it's like the difference in a vinyl record and a CD. And so we're working on an option to do that, but it cannot be done in solid state world. And I can't tell you much more than that because the patent attorney would thump me. But we're working on something that we think wouldn't, you go to all this trouble to create a tone, and then you erase your tone with one little part just before it goes to the PA guy. So if you look behind me, let's see, the white guitar, whoops, let me lean the other way. The white guitar is in front of two really small cabinets. We built those for artists that want to take this amp on the road or fly with it or go overseas, but they don't want a speaker emulator. So what do? I got to take a speaker with me. So they take my little amp or amps, they fly with them. That speaker behind me is actually built in the form factor of carry-on luggage. So it's the exact same size. It's 18 by 10 inches deep by 14 inches wide. So you carry it on the plane, throw it in the overhead bin, you got your amp in your other hand. They put riders in their contracts that say, I want speaker XYZ when I get to Germany, France, wherever the heck they're playing. If they get there and they like the speaker combo, they play it in and they go to town. If they don't, they pull out their little thing that they flew on the plane with them, and they always will have a baseline decent speaker to play through. And the speakers that are in those little ones, by the way, are still big magnet, 80 watt, with all kinds of configurations. So their resonance from 55 hertz to 60 to 75 hertz. They've got different qualities at the bottom. Some would remind your ear, if you're old enough, of the old EV guitar speakers that had a beautiful bottom, but they didn't break up a lot. They were a lot tighter in the low end. If you're a guy that likes that, great, that's your speaker. If you don't like it, I got a 60 for you that does more breakup. But at the end of the day, for me, it's this and this. And so if you can make a tool that gives a guy a better chance of getting to this and this without having to take 10 amps on the road with me, then that's the idea. Does that help, or do we more of an answer than you wanted? But that's where that goes. There's a lot of things on the shelf that I won't do. Like if I take, I don't know if you know this, Vintage Guitar Magazine gave us a great article on the little amp in January. And so it's in the January issue of Vintage Guitar. And I beamed on those people for a year. Review me, nothing. Finally get a guy at NAMM, says send an amp and I'll get back with you when the NAMM show's over. And I thought, okay, now they're blowing me off in person instead of via email. I get home, sure enough, he followed through. We sent the amp to him. Hey, when's the review going to come out? Don't call us, we'll call you. They did the review. When the review finally happened in about November of last year, and the guy actually did it in December because it didn't come out to the January issue. He calls me and he said, dude, we were pleasantly surprised. Can we get our hands on one of the flagship amps? So I told him I'd do a flagship amp. I had to send one to Connecticut. So you're about 150 pounds in a flight case to get to Connecticut. The guy called me this week and they said, we got to have a Zoom meeting. I thought something was wrong. And so Paul and I get on the Zoom. I guess I can say this. We're not taping, are we?
We're taping, but we aren't streaming.
Okay, good. Well, I'll tell you guys, and I guess it's okay to say we spoke with Vintage Guitar 3 days ago. And the guy that does the review was playing the big amp. And I didn't know why he wanted to talk to us. First thing he gets on and says, before we go any further, you've absolutely nailed it with this amp. I've been a reviewer. I'm 60 something years old. He's a world touring musician, la, 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 la. And he said, you got some things happening here harmonically, and especially with the present circuit kind of things that we do differently. I've never heard anything that does this. And my next record is going to mastering right now. And he said, I just got my hands on this guitar. And he pulls out a guitar and said it was Howlin' Wolf's guitar that had been in the Hall of Fame since 60 something. And somehow he winds up owning it. And he said, I want to use this in your amp, and I'm going to go back and recut things that had gone, they're supposed to have been gone off to master, but I'm going to hold it up and I want to see if I can recut some of these to use this amp. So we'll have a review on the big amps out for the NAMM issue, which will be in June. And we already know from talking to him, I'm assuming we'll get a great review off of that. And then we'll see what happens with them.
Well, that's great. That's great. So do you still have a control room down there behind that wall? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but since then I've rewired everything. My DAW and I use Personas pre's and gear in the back room, series of 192s. They're Personas version, but I've wired everything to this table out in this hall, out in this room.
Oh, okay.
So I've got pockets for speakers back in that control room, and the big computer system is back there. But then I can run it from this room or the room back there. So if we're doing this kind of thing, we're actually going through the thing in the other room. I don't know, there's some cables on the floor that we try to hide somewhat. That's what we always had rugs for. And yeah, the control room's still back there.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe one of these will give you, let me see if I can flip to the camera that's got the, okay, that's the top. This is an amp, I know you can't see my pointers, but this is an amp that we took to NAMM. And so I put cheat sheets on the top of it.
Yeah.
And I know that it has EL34 tubes and has an 8-ohm speaker that's resonance at 60 hertz. So if I forget, you know, when you're on a thing, I can remind myself what's there. This is kind of the room I'm sitting in.
Right.
And the drum kits you see on one side, there's amps right over here that is, we're doing the same thing. We have a bass amp that we've got on the road now. We're doing the same idea with it for mix and match circuitry that we did with British and American. But in bass world, there is no British and American. It's America, East Coast, West Coast, right? Fender, SVT, Ampeg. So we're modeling in that direction to have the same idea with Fender-ish, Ampeg-ish, East Coast, West Coast, mix and match, create your own tone stack. But if you can see that guy, there's another subsection. So I put a 300 watt amp in the thing that fits on your pedal board, but then I do slaves with that of either 700 to 1200 watts. Bass players need more oomph, they need more overhead. And I've got those on the road right now with a guy out of New Orleans. That's the guy's name is dadgummit, Paul Gilbert, played with a band called Mr. Big. And so his bass player, if I find the right camera, where am I now? If I got to find myself again.
Hey, I like your theater chairs there. They look real comfortable.
Yeah, you know, and late nights, that's just not a bad place to be. Where is, come on back. The one bad thing about some of the the USB plug and play stuff is I'll switch around cameras and they'll change what position they're in. The camera that was in number 1 now may be in number 3. So sometimes I fumble to get from one to the other. But so we'll have bass rigs. The bass player that's really somebody good to listen to goes by the name of Rugu, Reaugeaux. That's a bass player in New Orleans. He worked for Alan Toussaint. He was the music director at Alan Toussaint Sea Saint Sound for 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And when Alan died, then he became the music director for Dr. John. His real name is Roland Guerin. And the guy, he's got the Roland Guerin bass deal that's like 6-string, 7-string bass. And he plays the heavy strings that he plays bass on, but he makes guitar chords on the lighter strings. So he's kind of playing guitar and bass and playing all this, you know, stuff at the same time while he's singing. And so he's got the bass amp prototypes on the road with him now. So I hope we'll have those out in another, I don't know, however many months it takes us to work out little things with that.
Good.
So,
So what else?
you got those speaker cabs in the back, those suitcase size amp speaker cabs. How much
Yes.
do those weigh?
It depends on what speaker you put in there. Are you a guy that likes neodymium sound?
Well, I like lightweight.
Yeah, I'm with you.
My real question is what kind of speaker cabs will go along with the amplifier? I mean, how small can you get it?
I don't like anything much less than a 12-inch speaker. You don't have the surface area on the cone to really reproduce it. Now, while I say that, you see these cabinets, okay, here we go, because you're into the place where we're playing around with stuff. So just to that side of the white guitar, there's one cabinet that's about 3 inches taller than the other two, right?
Yeah.
It also will fit in an overhead bin and fits in your luggage. But remember the story about the 3 guys, the doctorate of physics. And one part of that conversation, they were telling me that 2 10-inch speakers done correctly will move 1.53 times as much air as 112. They just don't resonate deep enough. So that's actually a 212 cabinet. I'm getting pretty close on that, so that if I can give you something to go on an airplane that still weighs 18 pounds, 20 pounds, that would move as much air as 1.53, 1.5 12-inch speakers. Now you've got something that's a little bigger, meatier, moves more air than a 12, still fits on the plane, and it's still really light.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this stuff also is completely, what's the term? It'll like building blocks. So I've done things with guys where I've put 4 of these tube hybrids on a pedal board, and they set one up clean American, dirty American, clean British, dirty British, and you got multiple speaker cabinets, and they can kind of emulate a Joe Bonamassa where I'm flipping from Fender to Marshall to Dumble to Vox, which is the foot pedal. And the modular was the term I'm looking for. So if you just want to carry one amp one cabinet, because of the weight factor, you get by fine. And if you want to plug 4 of those single 12s in to this amp, that's okay too. If you want to plug this into a full Marshall stack at 100 watts, 8 12s, it'll just blow doors. So,
well, what about just a pure clean sound? Can it just get a pure? It's got a pure clean sound, right?
the clean sound's where you have to start. I've never, you tell me if you've seen one, I've never seen a pedal to go on your board that says clean. You got distortion, compression, everything else, but there is nothing that says clean. So you have to start with clean, deep, round, full. no squashed harmonics. I will tell you, in the big cabinet, the darker guitar, those cabinets are y'all familiar, or any of y'all familiar with what they used to call a blues breaker cabinet? And it's a 212, but because of the cabinet size, which there's things you can do with a larger cabinet you can't do with the small one to enhance low end. And with the speakers that are in that guy, a drop D on a guitar through that sounds like a grand piano. It just fills the room, and it's got this deep, gorgeous bring sound to it. So everything starts with clean. We can add dirty to a pedal, but if you're going to err, you got to err on the clean side. And I've got a lot of people that use this.
They always do real clean. They start with clean.
You got to.
Yeah. Okay. So
if I want clean, since I've got a gain floor that we can set, I can set the gain floor on 1 or 2. And then I may not set my preamp over 3 or 4. And I've got 100 watts. That gives me the extra overhead to not drive the preamp tubes at all if you don't want to. And you've got 100 watts then to raise that level up to whatever volume you've got to have in the room, and then put your pedals on top. Makes a great pedal platform if you're a pedal dependent kind of guy.
yeah.
The story on that blues breaker is they didn't make them for long. You'll see the Who play with them periodically. He still uses some of those, but they built them for, you remember John Mayall's blues breakers?
Yeah.
So Marshall made those cabs for Eric Clapton when he was in the Blues Breakers. And the old wives' tale is that he played on it and brought it back to Marshall, said, I love the cab, but it won't fit in the trunk of my car. So they kind of ditched that one, and they went with the smaller one that's similar to this next size. They're about 4 inches difference in the overall size of them. And that kind of gets to be the size that we've known for all these years. It's kind of the Fender twin Vox AC 30-ish realm for size for 212s. But boy, there ain't nothing like those cabinets. If you want a deep, oh man, what is the guy that plays the, I'll think about him in a minute because I use him as a reference all the time. The jazz player, been around forever, popular jazzy stuff that always has a dark, deep.
Kenny Burrell.
I'm sorry?
Kenny Burrell.
That
Yeah.
could be one. Man, I can't. This gets worse as you get older.
Is he still alive?
After yeah, oh yeah. It's a black dude, plays a lot of stuff that's, and I can't think of one of his songs.
George Benson.
There you go. Thank you. We have a winner, George Benson.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
There we go. But again, it goes, it's this and this. So what the whole deal for me is you get with an artist and you ask them questions and you find out what do they want to hear. Somebody will tell me, how do I set my amp up? I don't know. You got to work with you and see what works for you. And as y'all would know, if somebody explains to you about their tone with words, it's like trying to explain the sunset. There just ain't no way to get there. And you have to work with them. And by having more than just preamp and power amp to deal with, now I can start with circuitry. So let's say I'm playing a Tele, and a Tele sounds great on an O Fender Basement. So I play a couple of songs on a Tele, I switch to my Les Paul. Now my Tele just booms in the bottom, right? Studio guys hate them. You can't get the boom out of the bottom of them. The only way you can do it with the Basement's turning the bass knob almost all the way down. You do that, you suck the guts out of the amp. So on ours, you just go to the first switch that builds that frequency range in that portion of the tone stack. Let it be a Marshall or a Vox Marshall type British sound. Now my Les Paul sounds great, and my bass knob's still at the 12 o'clock position. So the knobs that we all have known and loved for 70 years no longer do all of my sound. They're now the fine tuning knobs. You start with dialing in the circuit that gets you close to here and here. You dial in the amount of gain that you need for your floor, and think of the floor as the spot where your preamp starts. So if I start here and go up, my preamp's going to get a lot rattier than if my floor was here and my preamp goes up to here. So you're going to control your tone stack, you control your gain, and now you're right in the ballpark of what this and this is, and you're using bass, mid, treble, presence to just fine tune to get you to that last step.
You ready?
Does that help?
Let's listen
Well-
to some music.
One last question I asked you about the Fender Deluxe Reverb. You know, it's a 22 watt amp. I don't know what the speaker is rated for, but you
Yes.
know, if you connect an external speaker to it, I mean, would your amp overpower the speaker on a Fender Deluxe or what?
No, there's a different theology we use for the master volume, and I'll forget this guy's name. Guy in Canada that was a recording guy for everything Nickelback, and I was doing a show with him in San Diego, and he said, "Can you make it sustain at a low volume?" So you squish the thing down with the master, and I set my gain wide open, and I set, in a studio, you get to a point where you use compression, and every pedal that's on our board for all of us is emulating something that happened in nature to begin with. Distortion was just a tube overdriven. Compression is when a tube goes really overdriven, and you can see it on the oscilloscopes, and the thing starts squashing down. So if I make an amp that can do it natively, now you don't need compression distortion. And I would never tell anybody to play a gig with everything dimed out. It's too much. I mean, normally we operate, our 0 to 10 knobs operate in this realm. I'm letting you operate in this realm. The good news is you got stuff you don't have access to before. The bad news, out here on the fringes, you got a good chance to shoot yourself in the foot. And guys that are used to just diming everything out. You remember Tony Moore, Barbara?
No, don't know the name.
Tony was a founding member with Iron Maiden, and we were doing a show in New Orleans, and Tony says, and I didn't even have the amps out then. All I had was old T-Watt shirts, the old, like this one.
Mhm.
I got a vintage shirt on actually now.
Yeah, you do.
So he had said, you got to make them go to 11. Your amp is like Spinal Tap. They were the band that never was. You ain't got your amp out yet. It's the amp that never was. So anything that is Mojo related, old wives' tale, anything else, we put it in there. I would never tell you to put the gain floor wide open and then bury the preamp wide open unless you're in a studio and you need to be Brian May. And then you just turn everything. So going back with Dale Pinner is the guy's name, and the engineer for the Nickelback stuff. So I got the guitar, and the amp was as quiet or quieter than I'm speaking. We just ran everything out, hit a note, and the note just sings. And we sat there and looked at each other for 30 seconds. And he's like, I said, you want to know if it'll sustain at low volume? Like, how long do we need to do this? Because we can go leave and come back. It'll still be playing the note. So yes, you can get very low volumes. You can sustain at low volume. You can be very clean. Choice is yours, but that was the point in this amp to begin with. Make something A, quality parts, no holes barred, no stone unturned, and make enough selections, and yet make it simple enough. You got 64 selections, you only got 4 switches, and your ear will tell you, if I've got my bass knob turned wide open and I'm still not getting enough bass for me, I need to be on an American circuit in the low end. So you do the American circuit, bring the bass back to the 12 o'clock position, add what you need. If there's too much, go the other way. But at the end of the day, the amp comes to you. It's all about the artist. Well, you know, the amazing thing with music, and I do genetics first. What are there, 23 pairs of genes? What's the number?
I've only got 2 pair.
Okay, I got one, so you're ahead of me. So I think there's 23 pair of genes, yet combination wide, there's no 2 people in the world that have the same genes. They can tell us apart. All the music in the world, we're all using the same 12 notes. So think of all the differences and the nuances that go into the different songs you guys write, or what you want to hear when you record it, or when you're playing live. You've got these nuances, but we still got 12 stinking notes, and yet all this diversity of music. So the idea is I wanted to build something that gives you a tool, a quality tool, and whatever you envision and you feel in your chest, I'm trying to give you a better chance of getting to your sweet spot.
Let's
That's
go
the
hear.
whole point.
All right. It
Let's go
sounds
hear
good.
some of that music. Let's go hear some of it. Let's do the screen
Now
share
this-
thing.
And you know what this is going to sound like.
Let's just a quick sample that.
Oh, you're going to listen to it. Oh, you're going to listen to it at the, I gotcha. Okay, sure. We went through some of these earlier today, and Harry bookmarked some, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And these are things that artists that have my amps that are playing on them. And of course, every one of those guys has got a great story. Harry got to hear a lot of them already today.
Yeah, they're good too. I tell you.
I don't know which guy you're bringing up first.
Well, we're gonna go Tech SWAT first to get to the
Yeah.
to the place.
And
then
you
we
can
get-
find this on our website. There's also a TechSWAT.
Okay, now you're gonna have to help me here. Which one you want to do?
That's a good one there. That's a guy named Joe James from Austin. I tease him. He's Hispanic. He looks like a Jewish preacher, and he sings like a black R&B guy.
What you doing, Mr. Fair? Don't you, Mr. Van?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there's one, and he likes just a little bit of grit, but primarily I don't think he gets his preamp over about 5, and he's using a gain floor of about 2.
Alex Zuniga. We did that. We listed
Alex Zuniga, this is interesting. He was an artist from, he's in Colombia, had a big for Colombia. He plays in Colombia and the crowds are all singing these songs. And you'll have to go look him up. They moved him from Colombia to Miami. They bought one of my amps several years ago. And he was like a heartthrob Ricky Martin guy they brought in from Miami, who happened to meet a girl diva singer from Denmark. They are now married. He calls that my Viking wife, and they have baby Viking and baby Viking number 2 on the way, and play in a band together called Blue Ashes. And I think this is when he was doing some of the putting together stuff for a Blue Ashes record that they're working on. he's kind of a pedal guy too. You asked before. He started out kind of clean, but and you'll like this, Barbara. They've got one of their songs that they call Checkmate. There's a line from his wife talking about how she can't control him like she's supposed to. What do you mean like you're supposed to? My goodness.
What's the next
You
one?
get down to Bobby Cochran. Yeah, that one right there. Bobby Cochran. Y'all remember There Ain't No Cure for the Summertime Blues?
Is that this one where just the guitar in the hand?
Correct. The guy,
Right there.
and we were doing the NAMM show, and all three of these guys came through and played on the same amp in the same room, 30 minutes in a 30-minute time frame. And I threw this video together to say same amp, same day, same guys, same whatever. I'm sorry, same amp, same cabinet, three different guys just turning the knobs to get three different kinds of music. So.
Yeah, I like that clean tone.
There you go. Well, that's Bobby Cochran. His uncle was a guy that wrote Ain't No Cure for the Summertime Blues, died in a car wreck in California at about 20. What was the Cochran guy's first name? That was his uncle.
Eddie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Eddie
you.
Cochran.
Boy, you're helping me a lot. So Eddie Cochran, and the tragic story here for Bobby is his daughter died, I think 30 years, 20 or 30 years to the day after his uncle died in a car wreck on the same street where Bobby Cochran died, same intersection.
Eddie Cochran, you mean?
Weird.
Yeah.
Was there something else we wanted to listen to down here?
I'm trying to think. I don't know what else is on there. Carter Arrington is a guy in London that is a.
Which
Oh
one?
my! Oh,
Which
there
one's
you
that?
just passed Alexis's wife, the lady, the blonde with the red jacket. That's Alexis's Viking wife there
Right
at
there?
Blue Ashes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's her singing, but that's their Blue Ashes band with. Yeah. And by the way, Alexis speaks 4 or 5 languages. His wife speaks 3, and their 2.5-year-old daughter speaks 4.
Wow. That sounds impossible, but
I know it. Well, she'll ask mom and dad for a glass of milk and use 3 languages in one sentence. because she just mixes intermingly. I mean, she's so used to it from hearing in the house. Carter Arrington is a, oh my goodness, jazz player that's in London that's got my amp and the small amp and the small cabinet. So he flies back and forth with it all the time.
Let me hear that one. I want to hear the quick clip of
There's one
Carter
of him somewhere of him. Carter Arrington somewhere where he's in a studio over tracking
Well, let's
some
go down real
insanely
slow.
fast stuff. I don't see where that, let's see, it got real blurry on my side, so I can't see which one is. Oh, there it cleaned up. Keep going down. I don't see Carter yet. Joe James, and that may be Carter. Oh, let's see. No, that's not Carter. Keep going down. Gosh, we ran across 3 or 4 Carters today, and I don't see any of them. The bald-headed guy's an optometrist that plays in jazz bands from in Louisiana. The Wild Plains in the Red Jacket is a rock and roll band from Hoboken, New York. I haven't seen Carter's yet. Have you?
No. Did we watch it? Was that on YouTube?
Maybe on the YouTube channel.
Oh, well, that's okay.
What is it, sweetie? You need to go outside. You want to go
No.
outside?
So
You want to go outside?
I'm good.
I'm gonna let you out the side door. What the hell do you want to go outside?
oh, there's Roland Guerin, the bass player. There's 13 seconds of him. See in the middle? Oh, and there's Carter below him. So you see the bass right in the middle, up
Right
and
there?
one right there. Listen to just a scope. No, one below that, please.
This one?
That guy, that's the Roland Guerin that's testing the bass amps.
Okay.
Just to give you some small idea maybe of what he does.
Looks like he has a thumb that's twice as long as normal.
Yeah, he's insane. And then Carter Arrington's down below on the left.
Right there? Oh, yeah.
Right there, that's one of Carter. Now, I don't know which clip that is.
And you kind of pick something to play over it with. We'll start with an arpeggio on each of them. So we got
And he
A7
teaches people online with this thing.
and D7. And pretty much what I would do, I'd start on the A7. I said, okay, if I'm going to play eighth notes and this chord's happening for 1 bar, that gives me 8 notes on that A7 shape. And then on the 9th note, I would basically try and connect it to the other shape in the D7. So I would literally just sit there and count. I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then move it into the next shape. And you'd start from different places and mix up the notes if you want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just like that.
Yeah, he's teaching there. I don't know if there's something of him really playing or not.
That's not the one we listened to. We had another one.
Oh, no. There's nothing down below there, is there? Did we miss him? But that is him if we see him again somewhere.
This him.
There he is down below, right there.
I like that already better than a regular a set Stratocaster tone.
Yeah. Well, and that's just him twiddling knobs. And he's playing on one of those little minor 12, I mean, the little bitty 12 cab that I've got sitting behind me here.
Okay.
Throw it
any
on
more?
the plane,
All right.
take it with him.
Well, this has been terrific, Jack. We really appreciate it. We really do. This has been very nice, very educational, very informative, and entertaining and fun, and all those.
Well, I'm glad y'all had me on. Barbara, thanks for broaching the subject with me. Hopefully didn't get into more detail than you wanted to know. But after 10 years of R&D and stuff, you're careful what you ask for. Why did you do this?
Well,
Because you get long-winded.
well, I think everybody enjoyed it. You got over my head just a little bit when you were talking about all the acoustics and the that was way over my head, but everybody else probably understood it fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you have questions or something, follow up. I'm sure Harry's got, or Barbara's got contact for us. Reach out, send emails. We get in Dallas in the next couple of 3 months, then
Are you going to be at the
somebody
guitar
wants to
show? Are you going to be at the guitar festival?
we lost a family member back a month or two ago, and I just haven't gotten around to getting back on
I got you.
the road with that yet.
Well,
I
thank you
may
so
go
much,
and
Jack.
just visit. I just
Yeah.
don't think we're gonna haul amps this time.
I got you.
I see a couple
Well,
of
thanks for
songs
having me,
tickets.
guys.
Well, let us know,
Sure.
Jack, because if you're going to be in Dallas, we can get you in there and you can come visit us at our booth.
I've
Sounds
got one
good.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
What do these amps cost when, like, someone of us wanted one?
The tube hybrids are a $14.95 retail, and the big amps, by the time you go through that whole mess and days in the studio, guys will spend from 9 to 16,000 on one, 9 to 17,000 by the time they have it completely custom made for them.
So do they buy them directly from you?
Yeah, they don't fit well in retail chain. And
Okay.
we visited with people, and the places that sell for discounts online, I won't call them by name. In general, when I visit with them, they say, do you have your patents? What does it cost to make it? How many points do we get? And how many can we sell? Not one question about tone, sound, or why did you do them? If, like the one video you played earlier today, the people at Phoenix that have them at their studio out there, they never ask about how many points do we get or whatever. It's how do you get this sound, that sound, etc. And the big box places like a Sweetwater or Sam Ash, the discounts, they're looking for say 40 points, 30, 40 points. So I would be making the amps and selling them for less than it cost me just the basic build cost.